Hello, I'm Paul Carroll, technical writer for Digital Photo Magazine, and welcome to this video tutorial on how to create an old-fashioned fine art finish using textures and borders. In this technique, I'm going to show you how you can turn this regular looking floral shot into an antique masterpiece. First, I'm going to boost the contrast and definition of the flower so that it really stands out. I'm then going to change the feel and mood of the shot, first by adding a texture to recreate a canvas effect, and then I'm going to add a second texture to recreate that distressed old photo look. To emphasize this look, I'm going to use a hue saturation layer to mute the colours. I'll then add a vignette to darken down the edges and create a natural frame to the image. Or, for an even more arty look, I'll show you how to use the fine art frames that we're giving away on this month's CD. I'm using Photoshop Elements, but this technique is also possible in the full version of Photoshop. Sometimes the tools and options are located in a slightly different place. So as we go along, I'll point out how users with the full package can achieve the same effect. Okay, I'm going to close down this example and then we can get started. Start by opening the image tulip.jpg off this month's CD. And the first thing we want to do is make a selection of the tulip. So to do that, select the polygonal lasso tool, which is in the toolbox about a third of the way down, and it's underneath the lasso tool. So if you've got the lasso tool showing, all you need to do is hold down your left mouse button and you'll get this fly out menu, and from the bottom of the list we can select the polygonal lasso. Now we want to make a selection of our flower, and I'm just going to do that quite quickly. Your selection doesn't need to be really accurate, but just work your way around the outside of the tulip, just clicking as you go, creating points with your polygonal lasso, which need to be a little bit more accurate around the top of the tulip there. So there you go, you can see that it's quite quick work. In some areas we can do larger lines, but when we come to the more curved edges here, we need to work a little bit more closely and just click more often. Right back down to the bottom of the stem, and then click at the start of the path to make our selection. Next I want to contract my selection because I'm going to feather it so we've got a nice graduated edge. But if I feathered at the moment, then my selection is going to bleed out into the background and we're not going to have a nice finish. So I'm going to make my selection a bit smaller on the inside of the flower, and then I can feather it. So to do that, go up to the select menu, down to modify, and from the flyout menu select contract. I'm going to contract it by 20 pixels, and when I click OK, you can see that my marching ant selection is now within the flower. Next I can feather it, so again up to the select menu, this time down to feather, and I'm going to feather it by a pixel radius of 25 pixels and click OK. Now I'm going to punch this selection into its own layer so that I can make any adjustments that I want on a different layer. And to do that, all I need to do is hold down the Control key and press the letter J on the keyboard. Now to be able to see that selection punched into its own layer, we need the Layers palette open. You can see mine isn't open on the screen at the moment. So I'm just going to go up to the Window menu and down to Layers. And there you go, you can see that it's popped up on the right hand side of the screen. And we've got our original picture sitting on the background layer. And here's our new selection sitting on layer 1. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the blending mode of layer 1 just to enhance the contrast and the colours in our flower. So just click on the downward facing arrow where it currently says normal, and from the flyout menu we're going to select overlay, and there you go, you can see that's had quite a dramatic effect on the contrast and colour. Next I just want to apply some sharpening. So I can do that by going up to the Enhance menu, down to Adjust Sharpness, and if I want to preview the sharpening that I'm applying, then I can just click with my mouse and drag this preview panel along so I can see the image there. And under the settings I'm going to enter an amount of 100%, so I'm just going to leave that as it is, and I'm going to enter a radius of 10 pixels. And there you go, you can see from the preview that's just bringing out a little bit of definition. So I'm just going to click OK. OK, so with the tulip enhanced, the next thing I want to do is add a texture to the image to start recreating that antique photo look. So from off the CD, open the image texture -30 tulip.jpg. And you can see there that we've got a ruffled and scuffed bit of paper, and we're going to use the texture from that on the image. So hold down Control and press the letter A, which is going to select all the texture, and then hold down Control and press the letter C to copy it to the computer's memory. Now go up to the Window menu and down to tulip.jpg. Hold down Control and hit the letter V, and that pastes the texture on top of our tulip, and you can see that it's sitting there on layer 2, but obviously it's masking out our image. So it's back to those blending modes in the layer palette, and this time we want to select the screen blending mode, which effectively hides all the black pixels from our layer 2 and only brings through the white scuffs and marks from our texture. The effect is a little bit too strong though. So in the layers palette, I'm just going to click in the opacity box, and there you go, we get a slider, and by clicking and holding on the slider and dragging it to the left, I can reduce the opacity of the texture effect, and I'm going to set it to around 50%. Just hit return. So the effect is starting to come together now, but I want to add a second texture to recreate the feel of an artistic canvas. So again from the CD, open the image texture-14.jpg, and this time you can see that we've got a picture of a wall which I photographed when I was out and about with my camera, and it's got a real gritty quality to it, which is going to recreate that canvas effect. So it's exactly the same technique. Hold down Control, press the letter A, then the letter C, copy the image, up to the Window menu, down to Tulip, and Control and V to paste the texture on top of the image. And that's going to appear again on its own layer, sitting at the top of the layer stack on layer 3. The blending mode I'm going to use for this texture is Overlay, which is in the 4th section of the menu, and this time I'm just going to leave the opacity at 100%. Okay, so next I want to mute the tones of my image. At the moment those colours are still looking pretty strong and pretty bold, but I want to recreate the effect of an old antique photo, where the colours would have dulled over time with exposure to the light. And I can do that using a hue saturation adjustment layer. In Elements, to create an adjustment layer, you click on the half black, half white circle, which is located at the top of the layers palette. If you're using the full version of Photoshop, you'll find exactly the same icon just at the bottom of the palette. So if I click on the icon, again I get a fly out menu, and this time I want to select hue saturation. And you can see that I've got the hue saturation dialog box up on screen, and also I've got my adjustment layer sitting at the top of the stack. So to dull the tones, really quite simple. All we need to do is reduce the saturation. I don't want to go all the way to -100, because as you can see that's going to create a black and white image. So I still want a little bit of colour in the image, but I'm just going to drop it to around -60. If I just move that out of the way, you can see that's really having a good antique effect on our image. I also just want to change the hues ever so slightly. So I'm just going to drop the hue slider. I'm going to go to around -10, and that's just giving us a slightly red hue, which is just holding the image together. And knock that back up to -10. So I'm quite happy with that, and I'm just going to click OK. Okay, so if I just zoom out, I'm going to do that by holding down the Control key and pressing the minus key. You can see that the image is really now coming together. But it's quite light in the top right hand corner here and across the top of the image. So what I really want to do is just create a natural frame for the image, just to hold it all together. And I can do that by adding a vignette. Now there are several different ways that you could add a vignette, but in this technique I'm going to do it using a levels adjustment layer. So again, up to the adjustment layer icon, and this time I'm going to select levels from the list. And as you can see, we've got the levels dialog box popped up on screen and a new levels adjustment layer at the top of the stack. Now to darken down the image, I can use the black point slider, and I just need to move the slider to the right. So I'm clicking with my mouse and I'm just dragging that black point slider right, and you can see at the moment that's affecting the whole image. And I'm going to set it to around an input level of 60 and click OK. So that's darkened down the whole image, but how can I apply it just to the corners? Well, this is where layer masks come in, which are another really powerful tool when you're using adjustments in the layers palette. At the moment, we've got a layer mask sitting on our levels adjustment layer. It's this white rectangle on the right hand side. And at the moment, we're not currently masking out any of the adjustment, but by painting black into our adjustment layer, we'll restrict this levels adjustment to certain parts of the image. Now, you don't have to paint into your mask using a brush. You can use some of Photoshop's other tools as well. And in this example, I'm going to use the radial gradient tool to mask out a graduated circle in the center of our image. So over in the toolbox, you want to click on the gradient tool, which is near the bottom in Elements. It's a bit further up in the full version of Photoshop. And you can see in the options bar, we can set up our gradient. First off, we can choose the type of gradient that we want, and we definitely want a black to white gradient, because the way layer masks work is you paint black to mask out areas, and you leave the areas that you don't want masked out white. Next, we want to select what kind of gradient we want. You can see that we've got 5 options on these icons here: a linear gradient, radial gradient, angle gradient, reflected gradient, and diamond gradient. And as I say, we want the radial gradient, which is the second icon along. Now, ensuring that we've clicked on our mask, and you can see that we've clicked on our mask at the moment because we've got the black outline to our white rectangle. All we need to do is click in the center of the image, roughly in the center. We don't need to be ultra precise. And then draw a line to the bottom right hand corner or any of the corners, and that's going to apply our radial gradient. And you can see up in the layers palette, we've now got a circle which is graduated right to the edge of our mask, masking out our levels adjustment in the center of the image and just darkening the corners. So if I use the eye icon in the layers palette and just turn off and on that adjustment layer, you can see how the image is getting a lot darker just near the corners. So there we go, our finished fine art flower. It's looking great, and I'd be more than happy to print that out and hang it on my wall. Another great way though to present your fine art images is to use arty looking borders, and we're giving away a load on this month's CD for you to use on your own images. They're really easy to use, and I'll quickly show you how it's done. Open one of the fine art images from the CD. I'm going to use distress _key _2 and open it into Elements. Or again, you can use the full version of Photoshop with our frames. Now if you take a look in the layers palette, you can see that we've got 2 layers. The first one is our border layer, and that's where we've created the border for you. Underneath that, we've got the image layer, and you can see at the moment when I turn off and on the border layer, there's absolutely nothing on the image layer, and that's represented by these white and grey checkered squares. So all we need to do is copy and paste our image onto the image layer, and it will pop through the frame which is sitting above it in the layers palette. So let's go back to our finished tulip image. I'm going to flatten all of the layers. Flatten image. Next, hold down the Control key again, press the letter A, then the letter C to copy the image to the computer's memory. Back up to the window menu and back down to our frame. And ensuring that we're on the image layer, I can just hold down the Control key again and press the letter V, and that pastes my tulip image underneath my border. And you can see the image is popping through from below. Now all of the borders that we've created for you are A4 in size, so they're going to be ideal to print out on your home printer. But as you can see, once we've pasted in the image of the tulip, it's not quite fitting perfectly in the frame. So we just need to transform the image. Make sure you're on your image layer still. Hold down the Control key and press the letter T on the keyboard. And you can see that that's brought up the transform bounding box. Hover your mouse over one of the control handles in the corners, and you can see that we get a double-headed arrow. Hold down the Alt key and then click with your left mouse button, and then you can drag the image inwards, which you can see is resizing it from the center and at the same time constraining the proportions. So we're keeping everything in scale, and it's still fitting within the frame. So I'm just going to shrink the image down into the edge of my distressed border there. So I've got a little bit of room above the top of the flower and the start of the frame. So that's looking pretty good, and I can release my mouse and then just click on the green tick in the bottom right hand corner to accept the change. So there we go, an antique looking fine art floral image presented in an arty border. I hope you've really enjoyed this technique. Give it a go using the star images off the CD and experiment with all our texture effects and arty borders on your own images. Okay, cheers.